Hello, hello. Welcome back to Thrive Hive. I am Hannah, and this is Chris.
Hey, guys.
So today we are doing, sort of reluctantly, I would say, a video that is in response to the big situation that is happening in the spiritual community right now and in the kind of couples community that everybody is talking about. So we figured that it might, if it serves someone, we think it'll serve someone.
I think so.
I think the more perspectives that people can get out there from a place of trying to understand it, trying to process it, and revealing our own personal truths and understandings, the better the world can grow into healthy relationships and grow into improved Eros, improved sacred containers, improved divine connection through sacred relation with another human. And so we thought that we would use our life experience and share a little bit about what particularly Chris's thoughts and reflections have been on this, because when the information came out, when this podcast, and if you aren't familiar yet, it's the Aubrey Marcus podcast, where he and his wife, Vailana, have revealed that they have opened their monogamous container, although it apparently had not been
so monogamous.
We all thought it had, and apparently it has not, but have opened it to include a very specific third individual, which is called a triad or a throuple, or they're using the term a constellation relationship. And so we're not here to be haters. And I was reluctant to come out and say anything because I certainly don't want to be critical. I certainly don't want to be judgmental. And yet, as we sit in the resonance of, is this feeling right, when we know that there are thousands of people, if not millions of people, young people and souls in relationship that are trying to find their way home to a healthy relationship, they're watching it, they're being influenced by it. And while they did a good job of saying, look, this isn't prescriptive, meaning that they're not prescribing it as a solution for lots of other people. They're not saying that it might be the best thing for people's marriages. At the very end, Aubrey was like, so if you're cheating, which 60 to 70% of marriages, their doctor guru guy said in the podcast, and I have to fact check that. But if you're cheating, you don't have to continue living a lie. Yes, we agree with this. Absolutely.
Totally, 100%.
Live in integrity, 100%. Where we disagree is that he suggested bring it back to your partner and you might find that you don't have to cheat anymore. Mm-hmm. Wink, wink, nod, nod, that your partner might be coerced into the belief system that now it's okay to open your marriage up and to bring in a third party, to bring in a triad or whatever the hell kind of a constellation.
Whatever you want to call it.
You want to call it, right? And to open up that container. And so instead of it being like, y'all shut it down and turn it inside and work on your own shit, it was like, maybe there's an opportunity for you to explore elsewhere, bring that back to your partner. And it brought up a lot of shit for Chris.
A lot of shit.
The minute that you watched it, you were really, and I know that you're not a fan of the word triggered because it's very kind of like millennial woke, and that is definitely not your jam.
That's okay.
But on a deeper level, I feel like it hurt you.
It disturbed me on a very deep level.
It was like poking needles into places in you that obviously from our history together are particularly sensitive. And we're taking this time, as we always do, to try to reflect on what is truth here? What could truth be for you, for me, for us as a couple, and for people out there who are trying to find ways to heal, to grow, and to thrive in their relationship. And so you, as you've been traveling, and I'll let Chris talk in a second, guys. You know I'm wordy.
It's okay. She's just really
I'm freaking wordy. I'm long-winded. But so while you were traveling last week, you had a lot of time to reflect on this, and it really did bother you at your core being.
100%.
You spent a lot of time working through it, and you sent me this absolutely beautiful reflection, I guess I'd call it, on kind of the main 8 points of what you're thinking and how you're feeling and what your truths are around this from the masculine perspective. Here's the part I didn't want to say, but the masculine perspective, particularly as someone who has survived a partner that they love very much and have stayed loyal, faithful, committed to, even as that partner suffered with multiple forms of addiction and wasn't able to keep herself to the same standards of loyalty and faithfulness that she wanted to. So you come from a unique perspective, which is really valuable for people. I wouldn't say the victim of, because you've grown a ton from it.
No victim. Yeah.
From the recipient of an unfaithful spouse.
Yep. And
someone who also 3 years ago asked you to pursue the idea of us having an open marriage ourselves. And we did a long video on this that we'll drop in at the end or however that works to please watch and go into further detail where we reveal that story. But the bottom line is that you are uniquely qualified, as am I, to talk about this because of the fact that your wife presented to you the idea 3 years ago.
Totally.
To allow an open relationship. And where a lot of dudes would be like, yeah, that's awesome. That's my dream. Like, cool. That is absolutely not your take. And so I feel like you're one of the few voices in the masculine that's willing to stand up and to defend a container because you've lived it. Even when you had the opportunity and you had blessing to go out and find your Eros elsewhere, you said, hell no, and here's why. So you gave me this 8 bullet points, and I think they're astonishingly profound. I got the chills multiple times when I was reading it, and I'm learning a lot from how you've been processing it. So
thank you. That's nice.
I wanted to turn it over to you.
Yeah, well, before we get into it, I guess, so I think she's planning on reading this and then asking me to reflect and maybe go a little bit deeper on each point or each reflection. But I would say that's the thing is for me, when this came out with Aubrey and the video, there's not many things that happen in my life where I feel like I get consumed by it, right? And this has been a very all-consuming thing for me between all the other elements I do for work and family and business and travel and whatever. This has literally been at the forefront of my mind for the past couple weeks, or at least for the past 8-9 days. And I have spent literally maybe 20 hours, 30 hours in reflection, just being in this, which is not normal for me. Like not to that level, not about other people's shit, right? Like
no, you don't do drama. You don't do interpersonal. You usually have such clarity. This is the right way to handle this. This is the wrong way. Here's my boundary. Address it with love and move on.
And it bothered me so much.
That's his style. Like he's very executive, very CEO. Like process, ask great questions, ask better questions, make a decision, let it go, move forward.
And
but
so
this
to
is
that
really
point,
like
100%. And to that point, like what happened, and the reason this is so impactful for me is because Aubrey was like my poster child, right? He was the guy who was poly, which when Hannah asked for the open relationship and went that route, and as I was processing it, I was seeking confirmation. I was seeking, like, I'm like, this is my truth, right? And I knew what felt
and poly,
right
for those
to me.
who might be new to this, is polyamory, which is the idea of having multiple lovers simultaneously, multiple relationships. Some do it very consciously, and they believe that poly can actually expand your love, that it's like having a second child, that you don't diminish your ability to love that second child, that your love expands and grows and creates more love and more divinity by bringing other people, by having multiple lovers at the same time. So that's polyamory.
And so Aubrey was like the poster child of the masculine who was poly that went monogamous and shared his story openly and was basically saying, it's not for me. And he took this, I'm going to say elevated position, and really made it a key point, a key foundational part of his entire brand. And when I saw that, it was, for me, it was validation, right? It was because I felt so strongly at that point in time that my feelings about this matter were right. We'll talk more about this as we go, I'm sure. I don't want to stay there too much here, but then seeing him and his process and his stories were a lot of the elements that helped me confirm that my feelings were therefore valid because, and he's got this platform.
Are very, very pro-monogamy.
Pro-monogamy, yes.
And you have been monogamous since you very first got like a boner in your sleep at 6 years old or whatever.
Sure.
Like you are built, Chris's DNA is not to look at other women, not to fantasize, he is one woman focused, has always been, has never been a question, has never been an issue in your DNA.
Well, that's because when I'm with a woman, I feel like it's my responsibility to protect that woman and to protect the container of the relationship that we have. And anything I do, whether she knows it or not, the world is energy. And so my energy that I emit, if I start having fantasies and start rubbernecking every woman that walks by that I find attractive, or start fantasizing about that is an energetic breach in a lot of ways. Or looking at porn, watching
anything.
porn, or any of that stuff. Right. And so I look at it and think my first and foremost job, and once again, we'll get into this, is to protect my beloved, to protect the person that I love the most in the world. And that is my main role. And seeing him now backtrack, revert, I'm not going to lie, it made me sick to my stomach.
So if you haven't watched his video, what happened is that he was poly. He came out against why poly is no longer good for him, because it was too hard, too extreme. It might work for some people, but not for him anymore, not for everyone. He found his woman. He met Vailana, promised her that he would go monogamous to be with her, to be in marriage with her, and left that lifestyle behind, and now is reverting back into the poly lifestyle.
Yeah.
And essentially dragging her with him is how people are interpreting it.
Totally.
She's speaking out differently. She's now speaking, saying, well, it's been very difficult, but I believe that every relationship requires sacrifice, and I'm not abandoning myself, and I'm checking in to make sure I'm not abandoning myself, but I also know that everything requires sacrifice, and I'm pushing my limits and stretching. And some can get behind that, and I think there's obviously a healthy time and place. Like, we're going to Peru tomorrow to lead an ayahuasca retreat down there. And so much of that work with plant medicine and with anything in psychology, in anything, we're pushing against our edges. We're finding where our edges are and seeing if we can lean into them a little bit for growth, for expansion. And at the same time, there are instances in life when we're being asked to do things that are just too far. And maybe the conversation with a lot of people is maybe she's not even realizing that she's actually being influenced and manipulated by his reverting, and that he's trying to convince himself, I don't want to put words into your mouth.
That's okay.
He's trying to convince himself that this is for spiritual growth and expansion, where realistically, what do you say it is?
I think it's escape. It's bypass. It's a breach of the container. It's not being true and protecting the person that you love the most, because he knows, once again, we're going to get into this. I don't want to go too far right now, but he knows what her traumas are. He knows what her greatest pains are. And everything he's doing hits right at the core. And they point blank went there on the video. And they were really transparent about that, which actually surprised me, because it left him wide open for this kind of critique in a way. And once again, I'm not trying to critique. And I do want to say before we start, this isn't about critiquing them. This isn't we're right, they're wrong. I'm right, he's wrong, my way is better than him. I want to make that really, really clear. Like, I think there's a higher power, that God knows the truth, and everybody down here is just playing this game, trying to figure out what enlightenment means, what it means to actually reach the other side in the most divine way. But we're all just ants running around.
Get there.
Yeah,
and what
how
the
we can get
methods
there.
are to get
right.
to that.
And so
place.
is there open for expansion? Should you go deeper? What's right? What's wrong? Poly, monogamy, like whatever it is. That's obviously, I'm speaking through the lens of my belief system. And so if you don't agree with me, I would hope that you would at least hear me out. And if you are somebody who is naturally more wired for monogamy, and yet you find yourself in a marriage where maybe you're not being completely faithful, maybe you're on porn, maybe you're flirting with women in the wrong way, maybe you're doing something somewhere in between, and you're wondering, wow, okay, I just saw this video from Aubrey. Should I follow his advice at the end and bring this to my spouse and maybe try to see if we can open things up? And you don't know how to handle that or navigate it, or you're just starting to question, is your way of viewing the world as valid, right? Or are you stuck in the past? That was a big thing for me. Is like, I didn't want to be stuck in perspectives because of the way that I was brought up. Hannah and I are always trying to expand. We're always trying to learn, but we're always trying to do it through a grounded perspective, right? We're always we hold each other accountable, and we're sounding boxes for each other. And
And
we
I think
create
these shorts are too short for my filming day today.
There you go.
Y'all.
We create a safe container for each other to say things. And I think that's the power of our marriage. And that's the only way we've been able to get through the things that we have is the trust is what it is because we communicate about it. And there are areas, once again, we're not perfect in our communication either. I want to be really clear about that.
Oh, shit, no,
right?
we're not.
Like, and so, but we communicate about most of the hard things way better than most. And the areas that we identify where we realize, it just happened a couple of weeks ago, we realized there's some areas that we were not communicating effectively with. And honestly, I got to look at this situation and I got to be grateful because this reflection that I emailed her would never have been done if it hadn't been for this scenario. And so I look at it and I'm grateful for these situations because they're what forge us. It's what helps us elevate. And, you know, you can fall prey to it and you can look at it and you can, maybe go off the tracks with your own life by following judgment that's not in alignment with who you actually are called to be on this earth from a soul level. Or you could ridicule and hate and be angry like I've seen so many people do online, which don't do that either, please, right? Or you could use it as a reflection to go inside, do it with meditation, do it with prayer, do it with plant medicine, do it with whatever, and really figure out, though, spend that time to do the work for yourself. Journal. That for me, that was what a lot of it was a lot of journaling, a lot of just sitting and thinking and voice memoing to myself while I was driving, like just getting it out and getting these thoughts. Like when I was watching the videos, I would take notes and I watched it multiple times and then I watched people's reactions to it and they bugged me. Like, cause a lot of the reactions, one of the reasons we're making this video is a lot of the reactions are just angry. And there's some points in there that I agree with, but I don't want to come at this from a place of anger. And I don't want to come at this from a place of superiority. It's not that monogamy is better than polyamory. Polyamory is not for me. I do believe in my soul, and I'm not saying I'm right on this, I'm saying I believe this, that a very, very, very minute percentage of people are wired for polyamory. And I feel like there's a lot of people in polyamory that is very trauma-driven. But, I mean, that's not the point of the video. But the whole point that I'm trying to get across there is everything I say is not trying to say, he's bad because he wants to do this. He's bad because he wants to be poly. I'm coming at this with these perspectives and these reflections, basically saying he's violated his responsibility in his sacred masculine role.
Ooh, bold drops. But I love it. I love that you are courageous enough to really bring your truth to light. So I honor the fact that you've held these truths for a long time. You've been willing to examine them from lots of different angles. Yeah. And now we are bravely and in support of them being vulnerable and opening, and we are thankful for it, to open the dialogue about it. And I totally agree with you. Just let this be an opportunity for all of us to go deeper within ourselves and to connect with divine and find out our own truth, because that's really what this lifetime is all about, right? Is distilling it to that purity. So, okay, with no further ado, some core themes in your reflection. Number one was Eros and integrity. Why fulfill it outside the marriage? So essentially, you're questioning the leap that they discussed from Eros breakdown. Eros, which is the type of love that is like a romantic, passionate, sexy love.
Sensual, exotic, that kind of thing.
All those things. Yeah. That's the Eros style of love. When there's Eros breakdown, that equals integrity breakdown is what they talked about.
Yep, that was a quote.
Yeah, both them and the expert that they had on there.
Their coach, counselor, or whatever he is.
And he's been walking them through all of this, giving them lots of praise for how they've been handling it. Yep. But he's really giving the stamp of blessing for them to move forward on it. So that's what you're questioning. And you're changing it to, from there, therefore, the assumption was that we must explore outside the container. When there's Eros breakdown, that equals integrity breakdown, they said in the film. And therefore, we must explore outside the container. Yeah. So the healthier interpretation of that statement might be, if Eros dies in the relationship, integrity is threatened. Threatened. Not like gone.
Not gone.
Threatened.
Right.
So the work is to revive the Eros within the container,
Yep.
not abandon it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you are challenging in this concept is the bypass of seeking an external fix rather than doing the internal relational work. Like
Right.
when shit gets a little dry or a little swampy at home, instead of going
As Aubrey said.
instead of going outside,
Yeah.
you bring it in. So your core value is showing up here as sacred commitment means investing the energy to restore intimacy, not escape the challenge. You want to
Totally.
talk on that point?
Yeah, I mean, it's this one hits really close to home because, and we've shared this in other videos. This is what we're going through right now. We've been together 23 years, almost 24.
Just a minute.
And we've had 3 kids together, and we've lived a big life, and we've gone through a lot of the things that she's already mentioned. And
Super highs, super lows.
super highs, super lows. And it would be really easy. Listen, don't get me wrong. I get it. It's a dopamine rush, like going out, finding somebody somewhere else. But that expansion is just a dopamine. And when you expand Eros outside of the container with your sacred partner, what happens is you're breaching the container and energy comes in that you can't control. And furthermore, you're using your energy in a way that I don't care. Everybody says love is expansive. I'm just going to say it this way. Everybody says love is expansive and it's infinite and whatever. And you know what? Here's the deal. I struggle with this one because at a soul level, that may be right. Like I believe at an element, at a soul level, love is infinitely expansive. And you know what? We live in bodies and we're finite beings and we all have egos and we want to control those egos and get to a certain place. But it's a lot to manage, and I don't think there are a lot of people that can handle that effectively and that can manage and navigate that. And so I would just say when we have this container, it's natural. Everybody has fantasy. Everybody has a desire where they see somebody where they get turned on by somebody else or some other situation, or they maybe get bored, and it's easy to have the dopamine rush come from external sources. But that's exactly it. It's no different than swiping on Tinder or scrolling TikTok or doing anything else. It's addicting. And if you allow that addiction to play out, to perpetrate your relationship in your sacred container that you've created, penetrate. That's what perpetrate works too though. But I think, no. All right. If you allow it to penetrate your sacred container, now you got me all screwed up. My tongue twistedness. But as soon as this dopamine rush and the outside thing, when it's breached
by the dopamine rush,
it becomes a perpetual thing, right? When does it stop? Like, when does it stop? I think, when I look at this, I look at it as sacred responsibility, sacred masculine responsibility. And his number one responsibility here is to protect his partner. My number one role as a man, the sacred masculine, is to protect my partner. And I take that as serious as anything. I'm not perfect in it, right? We're all humans. And I think this is important is, when there's a breach, when there's a breakdown in Eros, when somebody's maybe on porn or in these other areas doing things that are kind of how they would quantify as unfaithful, and in the way that they describe monogamous relationships, 60 to 70% of relationships are not monogamous because of people doing all these external activities, whether they're overt or not. I would say that give yourself grace. You're human. You're not perfect. Communicate. Talk about it. But going outside of the container is not going to fix it. Working on it, it's kind of like when you have a fire going. If anybody's ever been camping, when you have a fire, your fire starts to die, right? Does it make sense to go get a new exciting fire and build it next door? Does it make sense to try to rekindle the fire you already got going, right? That's the way I look at it.
It's simple, but it's really good.
Yeah.
It's true. It's true. Okay.
Cool.
I think you got it for number one.
Yeah.
All right. So number two, this brings me to point number 2, energetic integrity and sacred boundaries.
Yeah.
You bring up an incredible point that sex is not just physical, it's energetic. And that is something that hasn't really been talked about a whole lot.
Not a lot at all.
Or if they do, they refer to the energy in a way that it's only expansive and it's only better by bringing more people in.
For sure.
You're presenting another side. And many, many, many people are presenting the other side as well. You recognize that intimate energy exchanged with others doesn't stay isolated. It bleeds into the container. So from your framework, which echoes many tantric and spiritual conditions, that's a violation of the sacred space.
For sure.
No matter how conscious or agreed upon it is. And I say agreed upon or conscious because in polyamory, everything is blessed with the idea of consent. So as long as the other person is consenting, your partner is consenting, the other person is consenting, that is their holy grail from our understanding. And we are open to learning more. In fact, we are actually attending a couples tantra retreat this month in a few weeks to learn more. So we're not trying to speak for the tantra community. We're absolute rookies. But in that, what we have been sensing and reflecting as we talk to people who are poly in those communities, that they say, well, it's all about consent. And as long as there's consent, it's great. You're challenging that. Even with consent, it doesn't matter. Because intimacy is not just about consent. It's about energetic coherence. And that's a bit of a mic drop. Intimacy is not just about consent. It's about energetic coherence. Can you tell us some more about your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, once again, this just comes back to your beliefs. I realize a lot of people are going to hear that and be like in disagreement. But I would say we've been studying Tantra a bit, and as you said, we're not experts by any stretch, so I don't want to go there. But the Ipsalu tradition totally resonates with me in the sense that it takes two souls to reach enlightenment together, energetically, to elevate and to do the work together. And one can't do it alone. You need the masculine and
like
the feminine.
Spiraling.
It's a spiral. It's kind of like the yin and yang, and it's the intertwining. And think about the spiral up with the two souls going up. And that's what it's all about. And so it's one of those things where, to me, consent doesn't really matter because that doesn't change the actual result of the energetic breach. It doesn't change the fact that if we are on this path, and once again, if you don't believe the same thing I believe, well, then it's irrelevant. But if you're on this path and you believe that you are going this divine path to reach some form of enlightenment or some form of higher existence, and you follow these traditions, and that's the part that confuses me about polyamory, which, not saying I haven't figured out, because I don't.
And we'll keep asking people.
100%.
We'll keep gathering data.
100%. And that's the thing that's confusing me right now, is because a lot of the people who are poly, and I've heard Aubrey himself talk about Ipsalu and the gods, and I don't even remember their names of the traditions of the Ipsalu tradition that they follow. And I've heard him mention them, so I know he thinks about it. So there's a breach of integrity there. There's a discorrelation of what I've heard him speak about and then how he's showing up versus what my understanding is of Ipsalu Tantra.
Well, Ipsalu Tantra began working with couples only. So in that tradition, actually the Tantra instructor that we are working with as a relationship coach as well, started in the Ipsalu tradition. And then my understanding is that other traditions have been birthed off of that did allow for a more expansive, air quote, more expansive concept of bringing in multiple lovers to magnify by dropping the ego, by really doing the work on ourselves, to be willing to go through ego death of that's mine, that person belongs to me, and the possessiveness and the jealousy and all of the other limitations and traumas that are brought up by that. But then the original pure tradition is that Ipsalu specifically was created between a man and a woman, and the initial teachers would only actually coach
men and women couples.
In couples, monogamous couples. So that is because it's not just about consent. I'm giving you your mic drop again.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about consent. It's about energetic coherence.
Yeah.
So the consent is like the lowest bar,
Right.
the lowest bar. 100%. But we're talking about elevating beyond that, and elevating beyond that, not by bringing in other partners, but elevating beyond that and creating that consciousness through a sacred union between two people.
I think the hard part here is that it's hard to do it the way that we're talking about, and I don't know why I always do this, but I have to do it the hard way apparently. But
Yeah,
it's
you do pretty much everything the hard way.
but it's
Kind of your jam.
but but it's, I think, doing it this way. You know, they did a lot of talking of doing it this way, like keeping your relationship in the way that we're talking about it, reflecting, following the reflections that I have. It's the hard way. It's the way that's going to take more work. It's the way that's going to take more intentionality. It's the way that's going to force you and your partner to go through things together and be forged in flames, and it's going to make you stronger. I know that. I can speak to it. We've been through more stuff than most people could get through a fraction of, and we're still here. And I'm telling you, we're still not perfect, and we're still working on it, and we're going to continue working on it until the day we die. And I just feel like when you allow that idea of consent to be enough, you're losing sight. It's in direct opposition of the idea of energy. And it's in the direct opposition of viewing a sacred container. To me, there was so much hypocrisy in talking about his beloved in Vailana and talking about how much he loved her and wanted to protect her. And then it's like he goes out and does this. And I don't know how Alana coming in is feeling about it. I mean, she's obviously the new one to the party, but I don't know how either woman is ever going to feel truly safe. And if we go back to what I was talking about, the role of the sacred masculine is, and his responsibility is to keep the divine feminine safe. And as he's acting this out, it's all energy. And if you believe it's all energy, well then, what are you doing energetically to breach these containers and not keep your divine partner safe? And if you know you've breached that energetically to such a level, and if you, whether you agree with polyamory or not, and that's not the argument. My argument here for him, my call to action for him is to look inside and realize it's not, if you want to be polyamorous, dude, go be polyamorous, but don't grandstand and position it like it's something else under some veil of nobility. Like that's the challenge that I have with this. Because when you watch that video, to me at least, it was pretty obvious that she's damaged by this and that she doesn't feel safe. And she's doing her absolute best to make it work, to tough it out, but she is absolutely energetically violated. And it was pretty apparent. And so, consent or not, she's given her consent, but you're never going to convince me that she's not energetically violated. And that's his role.
Ooh, call out. Call out from the men, from the man to the men. I love this about you. You're such a warrior for principle and a warrior for good. And it's really incredible to see you being willing to stand up and to begin to share these things and call out other people to rise, not to call them out, to call them down, but to call them up, to rise them to their higher potential instead of this carnal desire that then they're coding and calling spirituality, but to really honor the feminine by protecting and by guarding us. And it would be a really, really, really beautiful world when we have more men in it like you.
Well, I hope too. I mean, I fully hope, and I actually believe that this is going to be a big failed experiment, and he's going to come back around. I really, truly do.
And this is from a former professional poker player who likes to gamble and bets on odds. So let's see. Should we draw some odds on what the time frame should be? I mean,
Should we do like Super Bowl squares and figure out when's the time frame? How long will it last?
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Don't be running lines on this. Don't be running by lines, gambling lines.
Gambling
Not
lines.
my old kind of lines. Anyway, we digress.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on to point 3. Could I want your pleasure even if it's not through me? This is huge. This one's like the hero. Like I am the hero by giving you this ability to be in pleasure, even if it's not through me.
Yeah.
Anyway, my judgment aside, this statement attempts to elevate love into a selfless, unconditional act. But you're pointing out that there's a category error here. Of course, we want our partners to experience pleasure, but sexual pleasure within a committed bond is categorically different than all the other kinds of pleasure. This is an example of spiritual bypass, wrapping a painful or selfish act in philosophical or spiritual language to justify it. Your core value is showing up that unconditional love doesn't mean boundaryless love. Sacred intimacy has structure, and that structure is what makes the safety and the depth possible.
It's everything. I mean, I think when you say sex is okay to be pleasured elsewhere, for instance, like if you open your marriage up, or if you open your relationship up, and polyamory is all about just this expansiveness. And for instance, if Hannah wanted it to go get pleasure elsewhere, it's like, I want her to have pleasure elsewhere. I want her, like, I cannot be the sole source of her pleasure, and she can't be the sole source of mine, right? Like, we have to have things in life that truly give us pleasure. But the statement in from a lot of the people that I hear talking about open relationships and whatnot, it's like they boil it down like the only pleasure in life is sex. And it gets so focused upon. And when we break it down, I mean, I don't need to go super long on this because we've already talked about it. It's, I want you to have pleasure. You should want your partner to have tons of pleasure. Like, otherwise you're just massively codependent, and it's just disgusting, right? And it's just, you're never going to be fulfilled and happy if you're not allowing your partner to have immense amounts of pleasure outside of you, whether that's with friends or relationships with other friends, whether it's activities they like to do, or whatever, traveling or whatever it is, whatever it is, it's fine. Go experience that. But when you bring the sex in, this goes back to sex is energy. Sex is not for fun. Sex is not for pleasure. Yes, it should be fun. Yes, it should be pleasurable. But it's an energetic exchange. And everybody talks about the fact that it's an energetic exchange, but they don't want to talk about the fact that there's that energetic breach that we've been talking about. And it's impossible. So, like, if we were to open our relationship up and then I were to bring a third partner in, no matter what, Hannah automatically would have to take on that energy. That energy now would be part of me. That's not negotiable. That's been like scientifically proven that those imprints with every partner you have sticks with you. And that's why I believe that, yes, encourage openness in other areas, encourage complete pleasure in other areas. But when it comes to the sacred intimacy of sexual and sensual stuff in that arena, bringing in outside partners breaches a container. And it's, I guess you could argue, so I'm not so dogmatic about this, you could argue that if there was a woman and Hannah was like, okay, I love her energy too, and we'd all, and it was literally a triad, literally a thing, that might be the argument that I'd be like, I don't agree with it. But if you're all, instead of two people, you want to live in like a three thing, like, I don't understand enough to know about that. But what I do know is when a masculine goes out and says, I want to find another person, like Aubrey found Alana, he kind of made his mind up. It wasn't like Vailana had a choice. He brought Alana to the table and said, this is the one. Vailana didn't have a choice in this. She was just kind of forced to do it. So Alana's energy is forced upon their container that they had sworn to protect. And that's where the problem is. Now, we all know Aubrey has tons of fun. Vailana has tons of fun. Just watch their YouTube and TikTok and Instagram videos, right? Like, they have tons of fun. But this is where it gets to be dangerous to me. And this is where, this is why Vailana's crying on the video multiple times. This is why, ultimately, I believe Aubrey's a good guy too, by the way. I think he's a little lost. And this is why I believe this is going to come back around, because I feel like he believes Vailana's going to be able to do it, and she may be able to endure for a certain period of time. But my hope, my belief, my prayer is that when he really sees that it's breaking her, that breaks him because he realizes he's breached his responsibility.
So all of
and
this
then
could
he'll
be
come
used
around
for
and
good. In
now
the
he's
end.
going to have another comeback story, right?
Yeah.
That
It's kind of like me. Like he learns life the hard way.
Yeah.
And by banging his head against a wall, cracking it open, and then
Yeah.
learning how to do the stitches.
Yeah.
And then he shares with people, hey, here's how I learned to do stitches.
Totally.
And he lives, I relate to him because I've fallen into fantasy before, and I can go pretty far down that rabbit hole before I come back up for air. And so I do understand, and I can also convince myself of things that there's a higher and good purpose in this.
But that's normal. That's part of the deal. When you're in that energetic field and when you're in the dopamine and you're being fed by, it's like a drug.
Oh
and
my
it's
God.
kind of like saying, hey,
Totally on
I'm
drugs.
high on drugs. And by the way, I know exactly what I'm saying and what I'm thinking and what I'm doing. Like I'm really good at making decisions when I'm high.
Yeah. Because
You
the
can't.
brain is just like firing, like out of a
Exactly.
fire hose with all of the happy drugs and the
Precisely.
excitement and the, I mean, when I went through this situation 3 years ago now, 2.5 years ago, whatever it was, with this other person, that just awakened me in ways that I didn't realize that I had been dormant for a long time in our safe container. And as part of that, I lost my appetite. Like I started to just drop weight. I probably lost 15 pounds or something over a couple of months. And I didn't need to eat. I was just running on adrenaline and dopamine, and I was losing sleep. I was sleeping maybe 4 hours a night or something, and would wake up full energy, full attention, just on. I was just like immediately happy and exuberant. And then the minute that I pulled away from that back into the reality of my life, I was sluggish again, and I was like, eh. And so I literally was like being on drugs during that time, and I know what that feels like.
And to that point, like,
and it was obvious to people around me.
yeah,
Like
wicked obvious.
it was wicked obvious. And not that I was admitting to anybody, but all of a sudden I wasn't wearing just yoga pants and sloppy hair and no makeup. Like I was feeling on fire. But the actual biological weight dropping and not needing to sleep, that's very, very, very similar symptoms to being on drug use,
Totally.
that are uppers. So I just wanted to also put a positive twist on this and remind, as we wrap up this one thought, the beauty of that. Like you're talking about what breaches the container. The positive of that is with a secure container, you're creating the safety in the structure, not a cage, but the structure and the depth that is possible. And that's where the beauty of a real Eros long-term love. The reason we all committed to each other in our vows originally, y'all, remember that? When we were fired up on all the freaking high drugs of being hot and horny and in love with these people, that down the road, we forget the reason that we did that at the very beginning when we made these commitments is to expand with them and to grow in depth with them and watch our love change from this hot, horny, passionate love to something that really becomes unconditional.
Yeah.
And that to me is where we begin to commune with God. For me,
100%.
It's been the work on being unconditional, which I haven't been to myself. I mean, if you know me, I've been the hardest critic to me of anyone. Like, I don't give a fuck what you say about me because I have said stuff that is 10 times worse. And the dialogue in my head has been so much worse that, where was I going with that?
I don't know.
The critical nature of it. Yes, the critical nature of how we can be to ourselves. But the opposite of that is the unconditional. And when we engage in this long-term relationship, we're practicing unconditional love. When we get bored, when we start to feel less alive in the nether regions and kids happen and the Eros fades away, when our bodies start to change and things get floppy and gravity takes over. And I mean, you and I are just at the beginning of that in our aging process. But we look at marriages and relationships that go into their 80s and 90s, and that love, no, it's not sexy and passionate anymore, but the depth of love, there's not a person alive, there's not a person watching this that you haven't seen an old couple who has really grown in their depth together. Not the kind that just endure each other, that are out of shit to talk
We've
about.
seen those too.
We've all seen them.
Yeah.
You know, the couple that like they look down and they don't have anything in. No, the couple that really engages. They're like The Notebook, They're so inspiring. And that is what we have to look forward to when we keep that container safe and protected. So we rail on what not to do, but I also just want to remind people the reason for keeping that sacred container is so that we can grow in the depth, like the well.
Well, and look at it this way. The one constant, Tony Robbins always says it, the one constant, the one thing you have to accept is change, right? You're going to change. Your relationship's going to change. It's going to evolve. The person you married is not going to be the person you're with 30 years from now, right? And so when you look at that, I look at, there's a nobility. They tried to position their whole what do they call it? Constellation relationship. Mm-hmm. Their whole constellation as noble in a way, as like a higher path, a more awakened path. I would argue that it's escapism. It's escapism from really doing the growth, doing the work, because you're going to change anyway, right? He's going to have to deal. They're all going to have to be growing and changing, and the people they are today is not going to be the people they are 10 years from now. And so they're all going to change. But what they're doing is they're building habits that every time we change, we just change our environment. And they're just escaping the actual work that takes to grow. We can all bounce through life and change and do all these things and change partners and change jobs and change locations and change friendships and all these things.
Yeah.
Doing the work to build foundational security is what allows us to grow.
Yeah.
And you can't do that outside of your sacred container. That's the way I look at it.
In 12-step recovery, we call it the geographic cure.
Yeah.
That in early recovery, or when people were actively drinking and using, it's really easy to convince yourself that the place is the problem. The people around me are the problem. The place is the problem. So I'm going to move to a different state. And then we bounce from state to state to state until we finally realize that everywhere we go, there we are. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing here. And then we go, well, fuck. Totally. I guess I better learn to put some roots in and to look at myself in the mirror, because the only constant in this chaos has been me. Yeah. And it's the same thing in this relationship status. If we just bounce and bounce and bounce, we're never actually building that, the depth of growth. So anyway, that just kind of came to me.
Cool.
All right. Number 4. Time and attention in modern relationships. Mm-hmm. So you agree with the claim that most couples barely invest in their relationship.
100%.
But instead of dissolving the structure, your response is double down on presence, recommit, and prioritize. You see the opportunity to restore Eros within the monogamous container, which takes more courage and consciousness, not less. Yeah. So your core value that's showing up here is that monogamy isn't lazy, and it doesn't happen well by default.
Right.
It's sacred and intentional when chosen and cultivated.
And this is kind of what we were just talking about, but just going deeper, right? So polyamory is easy because your chemicals and endorphins in your body run the show. You're allowed all these extra things, so you can get driven by just this toxicity of endorphins, right? And I guess it might not be always negative, toxic is bad.
And they would also, I'm just going to pull out the devil's advocate. Sure. They would also not say that it's even or easy. The people in that lifestyle.
No, I don't mean that. But
you said it's easy because
it's
the physical aspect
the physical
of
elements
it
of it
is
are
easier
easy.
Because your biology is driving you through the idea of all of the novelty.
Right.
The novelty
hard part
turns
about,
on brain chemicals that help it to be.
The hard part about poly isn't when you're with your partner or other person. It's when you know your partner's with the person you care about is with the other partner.
Someone else.
That's the hard part about poly, right? Like is getting that and kind of the ego death that is required to go with that. Once again, I've never experienced it, so I can't speak to it, but I can only imagine. Like,
and we ask questions.
Yeah, totally.
We have honest conversations 100%. With people.
So what was it?
But you were going into that monogamy isn't lazy or by default.
Oh yeah, and so
that is easy because
right.
Your biology helps you.
And monogamy takes so much work. It does. But it's easy. Once again, I'll argue it's easy to just go through life and give up. And we all know people that have just given up on life, that are just showing up. We're zombies walking through. We're sheep just kind of going through life, and we're going to work, and we're picking the kids up. We're bringing them to soccer practice. We're doing all these things, and maybe we're doing a vacation a year, that kind of deal with our family. But there's no real depth of intimacy for most relationships. There's no real intentionality behind them. Date nights. And a lot of people like hide behind date nights, and they're like, hey, like if we have a date every week and we go out to dinner and come home and have sex, like that's intimacy and that's intention. No, that's not intention. The reality is you're growing, I'm growing, she's growing. And We don't know how we're growing. It's impossible to know. If you told me 20 years ago that I was going to be here talking about this topic on this podcast, running the company that I'm running in these other areas, living in the Caribbean, doing these things, I would have told you you're effing crazy, right? And so you don't know who the future you is. You don't. You're going to grow differently. Your partner is going to grow differently. And so the job there is there's work to grow together. And you made a commitment to be with each other. And I'm coming at this from a place of marriage and my beliefs with that. Because if you're not, and you want to go a different direction and you're not married or you're not really life committed, but whether you're married or not, if you've made that lifetime partnership to another person, if you've got that level of an energetic exchange, marriage is just a title to me. It's the energetic commitment and bond that you have. To me, that's the container. And it takes so much work, and it's so worth it because I see people all the time. I talk to people all the time. I talk to men, I talk to women who look at our relationship and they're like, oh my gosh, I want what you have. I'm like, careful what you ask for. Careful what you ask for.
It was forged by fire.
Big time.
And
work and intentionality, and we get through the hard stuff.
And we talk about the hard stuff, and we process the hard stuff, and we're willing to do what it takes individually, and then come together. When we were first married on the reality show with Greg Barrett, shout out, what's up, Greg, and Amira, if you guys happen to be watching this, I remember distinctly them saying to us, and we were young, we were like 24.
Yeah, 24.
Right? 24, 25.
26.
And
you were 25.
I was 20. Okay. So they were like, there is the man, the woman, and the marriage. And it was a triangle. So we have to grow as you. You have to grow as you. I have to grow as me. And then it was almost like there's that parallel through line.
It's almost the man and the woman are at the bottom and the relationship's at the top. And the more you each grow independently, you elevate together.
And I always looked at it almost like train tracks where, one can go out for a little while, a little bit, and the other can go out for a little bit, just in terms of differences in their life priorities. But you really can't go too far because you have that through line you have to stay close to in the middle. There's you, me, and the marriage, and they all need growth. They all need work. So that's a totally different video. We could go off on that analogy.
Totally.
And, I could digress, as you guys know, so easily. But the other topic in that, the other quote that came to me in that, now where did it just go? Was that, we were told when we were young that we were going to have probably 7 marriages. And I remember looking, it was like an old person. Because before I got married, I did a bunch of research. Whenever I would stand next to someone at a grocery store line or a park bench, or I had the opportunity to talk to anyone, I was like, give me advice. What has worked? How long have you been married? Are you happy in that marriage? Is that fulfilling for you? And if so, what has worked and what hasn't worked? I guess I'm just a natural interviewer. Funny, it took me so long to figure out I should be interviewing people. But I've always just done that. It was like gathering data, from the inner workings of people. And what I remember hearing back then is you're not marrying one person. If you're married to them for 50 years, you're marrying 5 people. Expect, and this of course, don't hold me to the 10-year thing, but expect that about every 7 to 10 years, your partner is going to shift dramatically sometimes who they are and what their belief systems are, what their paradigms are for how they operate in the world, who they want to be, how they want to show up, what their passions are. And so hang the fuck in there, because every 7 to 10 years, you're going to get a new marriage in your current marriage.
And
you don't
hope for that.
And you don't need to go outside for that. Ideally, that's actually what you want. Even next level. And that's great for me because I'm someone who loves variety, which is why it's easy for me to see the shiny object and think that would be really fun. Can't I go play with that new toy? No, you freaking can't. And thankfully, Chris is the mirror of, responsibility and wisdom and depth here that holds this train, holds it all together. But the idea for me, I love, and what you've really exemplified, especially in these last couple of years, is that coming true, that you are a completely different guy now than you were 3 years ago. I mean, you weren't wearing beads and tattoos and just being a version of you that's cool and that knows who you are. 3 years ago, you were still suited and trying to get people's validation.
Button down shirt. We slowly.
Yeah, that's true. Suits were quite a while back. But you're really opening and you're really exploring and being willing to change and grow who you are, while at the same time acknowledging the core. And this piece, this is why we're back to, this is like such a major piece for you, because this is a through line that you came into this lifetime with absolute 100% unequivocal knowing. And only as we've kind of stress tested the theory.
Kind of.
With me, obviously, with the request a few years ago, which is when you found Aubrey.
Yeah, it's when,
3
and
years
so now
ago.
looking back at it, people are asking me like, how do you deal with that? And I'm like, I'm grateful for it, because I wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened.
Yeah, and Aubrey taught him the videos with Aubrey 3 years ago when I asked him about, hey, would it be okay if I brought this other person into our relationship? And I had a relationship with the other person. And he did the research. Like, Chris dug in and he found the Aubrey videos, and he really appreciated how Aubrey was so honest about the whole polyamory piece and what was good and what was hard and what was not good. And then came to the conclusion of coming to me and saying, look, I'm not going to call you names for asking for this. I'm going to honor your request. I'm going to look for the okayness in why are you asking for this? And instead of trying to shut me down and belittle me and shame me for having these beliefs, because I was trying to do it from a place of integrity. I said, look, this is something that is lighting me up and I think would be cool and fun and good for both of us. And I insist on doing it in integrity, in a way that I didn't when I was drunk and young and I was absolutely out of integrity. I at least tried to do it differently this time. And this isn't to toot my own horn.
And that's what Aubrey said, though. You basically did what Aubrey's call to action to people was.
Yeah, I brought it to you.
You brought it to me in integrity.
In integrity, and said, look, I'm a little bit out of integrity already because I've gone emotionally farther down the rabbit hole than I should have. Like, I was emotionally pretty plugged in. And energetically even, the container was breached. Like, I was
100%.
already on that boat energetically.
Yeah.
And so in that, again, I will apologize that I was a bit out of integrity there. And I'm going to be honest about it, as I wasn't then, but I have been since then. And I at least try to do it in integrity. I totally forgot where I was going with that.
It's okay.
But all in all, help. I forgot where I was.
It's okay. I mean, I think
that it has to be cultivated.
Yeah.
Should we just wrap it up for number 4?
Yeah, it has to be cultivated.
That time and attention has to be cultivated, and where your attention goes, the energy flows. So if there's a leak in the container, this is where I was. The leak was in my container, and I was putting energy and attention into a third party. And of course, then the flowers were like just drying up. Like, it was getting worse and worse with us because I was putting my attention elsewhere and the energy was flowing. So we have to bring the cultivation to the container that you have made a sacrament to be in, and a sacrament to God, not because it's some religious context.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, I love that. And I think it's...
I think
that's why I think that example is why we're so passionate about this topic.
Yeah, and sharing it.
And because we've been through it on a really deep level that most people will never go through, to where one of the partners has the boldness and the courage to ask for that, and then the other partner, other partners willing to actually see it and entertain it and go through the potentiality. And so
and research it. Yeah.
There's a quote, and I want to say this to encourage everybody, and it's not just about this, but it's I heard a quote the other day, and it's, if you want to change your life, when somebody asks you a question, instead of thinking it can't be done, or like in the natural example there would be like, my beliefs were fuck no, to the open marriage.
And kind of F you to
and
me
kind of F
for
you
even bringing it up.
Yep. And
you
that was
say that
was my gut feeling, right?
Yeah.
I felt like I'd been gutted. And in that, the quote that I heard was, instead of just coming out and saying F no, seek curiosity and go from the perspective of, if it could work, how could we make it work? And that's everything. It's instead of just giving a hell no and being defensive and reactive, and we all do this in different areas, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at doing this, by the way, but when I'm at my highest level, which thank God in this moment I was, it was, all right, it's a whole hell no in my body, but if it could work, let me do some research, let me figure out, maybe there's people doing it, maybe like whatever, I'm going to go down that path. And I would really encourage everybody, whatever you decide, whether you decide poly's for you or monogamy's for you or whatever, don't just watch this video and be reactive. Do the work. Like, go inside, do the research, watch dozens of hours of videos, talk to people on both sides, get into environments where you actually talk to people one-to-one about it and feel it out before you make a decision.
Yeah, which you did.
Yeah.
And there were not many examples that we could find, that
Right.
you could find, of long-term couples that worked out and their family overall was improved
Right.
and sustained, and in the long term that it actually worked.
Right.
And so, yeah, we're thankful to
And here we
Aubrey for
are.
putting that out there to begin with.
Totally.
Because it allowed us to actually strengthen our container instead, and to double down. Back then, like, we wouldn't be sitting here today.
In a lot of ways, even though he's doing this now and it's kind of going backwards, he's had more of an impact on our relationship from just following his life story and us using our own core values and modeling his experience and the content that he shared for us to come to our own conclusions, right? We're not following him. We're not doing things the way that he did it, but it's helped us grow.
It's like Tinder
immensely.
for the research fire,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
for the self-reflection fire.
Yeah.
The other thing we didn't talk about, which actually does play into time and attention, and I know that this one's getting a little long,
That's okay.
but time and attention. The other thing that you and I have reflected on after watching this, like, this is just us talking in the car. This is the stuff that we talk about.
Yeah.
Was like, I watched it yesterday. I watched the full thing yesterday. And I came home exhausted.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
exhausted.
Oh, my gosh.
Like, I was trying to put myself into the shoes of Aubrey and fully, like, absolutely trying to just embody where he was coming from, to give him the full on benefit of the doubt. And also, I did the same thing with Vailana as I was watching her and feeling her and trying to put my life into her life and how could I get to the place and all of this stuff. And then when Alana was talking, I was really trying to be in the spirit of that person.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of work. And then I would pause it and I would check in with my body and be like, okay, where do I feel this? What's coming up for me? Is anything resonating? Am I feeling repulsed? Like, am I leaning into this? Am I leaning against this? What's up with this? And sometimes I would feel something and sometimes I wouldn't. And I don't have a great feeling vocabulary yet. It's improving. So I didn't always have words to describe my feelings around it. But then as I was just stewing on it and brewing over all of it and then applying it to my life and like, could my belief system wrap around this? I mean, they have an expert. Obviously, this expert is very well read and has a lot of colleagues in the space. And I could believe the points, and I can absolutely, like, I left watching it being like, yeah, I could get behind this. I get the concepts. I get the points of it. And then the longer I took a few hours after, I was like, there's just an in it, and I had to explore that. But I was freaking exhausted. All of this isn't to be in judgment for or against. It's to say the energy that it took from my body to be in processing of all of it as it relates to this concept of how much energy it takes to have additional relationships. If people aren't even putting the time in
Into one.
to their one relationship,
Right.
how the heck do they think that they're going to consciously, spiritually, and not just carnally explore and bring in another relationship?
Totally.
Like, you and I would not be getting anything done if we had
100%.
other stuff. Like,
Right.
if we were just in the drama all the time of this person and the feelings,
Right.
and am I going to this person's house for a sleepover? Are you going to this person's house for a sleepover? Who's cooking
managing the
dinner
kids?
tonight? Who's managing the kids?
Yeah.
Who gets to take who on vacation? How does all of that work? Like, logistically, what a nightmare. We couldn't build the big things that we have been called to put on this earth to build if all of our attention was leached into the management of a process like this constellation.
Right.
So even if we take any other belief systems out of it, any instincts, any leanings in any way,
Yeah.
the energy that is involved in managing constellations or polyamory is massive. And even people in the poly community would agree with that.
Totally.
I feel like it is a better responsibility. It's a more responsible use of our own energies
Yep.
to go out and create magic in this world, to live our life's purpose, than it is to let it drain out in all these relationships.
I love everything you just said. And I just want to go back and highlight once again, and I did it earlier, the hypocrisy of Aubrey in the statements that he made in some of the video, in the sense that he's criticizing people that they're not giving enough time to their marriage, yet the solution is to bring in more partners. Like, and it's interesting. And we talked about it a little bit, but it didn't really like hit me. Like it just hit me when you just said it. Think about the
logic of
incongruency,
that.
the logic of
logic
that.
of it.
If people aren't doing it, your way to solve the problem is to bring more people in. Like you're not going to manage those relationships. You will for a period of time while it's still fun and hot and sexy and you're into it. And then when that fades, at some point in time, somebody gets hurt.
And you're going out to look for your next fix.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
And so when, I forget his name always, but when the
doctor,
the
or
doctor, the
counselor,
expert
whatever.
counselor said that the average couple is giving 6 minutes a day to their relationship.
Yep.
I think it was him who said that in the video.
Yeah.
Then what would happen if we took that 6 minutes?
You get 3, she gets 3. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving on.
Moving on. Let's go build some big shit instead.
Let's go build some big shit.
All right. Love it. You guys here for that? Cool. Number 5. So turning off comments.
Yeah.
Is this a sign of shame? You made a powerful observation, I feel like, here when you said if they were fully integrated and aligned with their choice, they would welcome dialogue and questions. By muting the response, it suggests inner conflict or avoidance.
Yeah.
It seems like they're protecting the narrative instead of standing in the fire of accountability.
Totally.
Your insight was that real leadership invites transparency, and when the truth is unshakable, it doesn't fear opposition.
Yeah, I believe in authenticity and transparency. That's just kind of 2 of the big things in my life, with business, with my other companies. And it's interesting because this is just showing up in congruence with how they've been in the past, in my opinion. They mentioned in the video that they were out looking for partners. They were both on sites, dating sites, seeking. We've heard from other people that have been involved in their containers in different events that not everything was energetically above board. And so, there's been a lack of transparency from a public perspective on their content and whatever. I feel like the portrayal might be, and I'm not saying this is the way, but I think it's something to look at here, that the portrayal of their relationship versus what was actually happening behind the scenes is different. And I'm not saying people are allowed to have their private lives, but as soon as you kind of take the position of being a spiritual guru and a seeker and somebody who's leading people in this way, I feel like you have a responsibility to be transparent. And, and when it comes to turning off the comments, I would just say this is like, it's pretty obvious. I don't care what it is. Like, granted, I've never launched a video like this, but I get threats on my channel all the time from stupid people. But I know my truth. I stand in it. I don't delete comments. I don't pull people down. To me, this was an opportunity for them to stand in the fire with full conviction, full authenticity, full embodiment, and let the people who ridicule them look like the a-holes, right? And my stance on this would be, if they had done that, it would have shown more conviction, more self-belief, and they would have been galvanized by a community around them that would have looked at those comments and wanted to defend them. But now they've even taken that away.
Which is what happens on your videos on Life
Totally.
180, is
Totally.
that when you have a bunch of trolls that come in and say things as you're trying to defend the American consumer against poachers, essentially, in the financial world, the people who understand and follow your leadership, they do come to your defense often.
Totally.
And if not, you just send blessing to those that don't understand.
Yeah, I literally
yet.
tell people they need a hug.
They need a hug.
It's
We
all
started
good.
to come up with a joke. Like, you need a hug. You just send them back. You need a hug. Sounds like you need a hug.
Yeah.
And they could have done that just as easily. But
Totally.
What are they hiding? And I think the challenge in the lack of transparency, like you had said, was that I think the last time they talked about it on the channel was when they discussed how he had gone from polyamory to monogamy. And now all of a sudden, not only has it not been monogamous for a long time, but it is all kinds of crazy in that monogamy. So I appreciate your transparency. And are we allowed to have some privacy in our lives?
Of course.
Yes. But the more you put yourself out there in a particular topic as the leader, as the example, you do have a responsibility to the people that are And are
100%.
entrusting their belief systems to be in alignment with your belief systems, that if that's shifting, you got to bring people on kind of for the ride. Otherwise it's deceptive.
And this is
Is that
like,
what I'm hearing you say?
and that's the core of my whole argument here. My whole problem with how he's handling this is a lack of responsibility for his role as a leader in his relationship and container, the masculine sacred leader, leader as an influencer and a spiritual kind of thought leader. He's dropped the ball. Not saying he's whatever. He's dropped the ball. And that happens. And maybe he'll pick it up at some point in time. But
he's dropped the ball because I feel like you lost your train of thought. Did you? Because he's not keeping his people safe.
Right. In any way. And he's not leading.
He had a responsibility.
And he's not taking the responsibility to handle his role. He's not taking the responsibility in his community now. You can't tell me he didn't know that when they posted this video, they weren't going to get all these comments. So why turn them on and then turn them off? And then write a whole description about it? Like, that's the part to me is a lot of this feels like a drug reaction. It goes back to that. A lot of this feels very manic, very reactive, not very thought through, because there's a lot of behaviors. And when you look at the comments, that's a perfect example. The comments were on, people made death threats, people made all these threats, people did all these, I mean, they're ugly. Okay, people are idiots, they're trolls sometimes, especially on YouTube comments and social media comments. And then he writes this whole dialogue in the description, right? And explains why they took the comments down. Once again, reactive. You can't tell me you were going to make this video and you knew you were going to get railroaded. You knew your wife was going to get railroaded. The person that you're supposed to protect, by the way, you knew she was going to get run the fuck over. And you put it out there for that. And then all of a sudden you're going to react and take it down playing a victim?
Playing the hero.
Playing the hero victim?
He likes to try to present that every one of his plays is that he's doing it for the good.
Yeah.
He's doing it for the good of elevation. He's doing it for the good of spirituality. He's doing it for the good of Vailana, because he allows her to have sexual interactions.
Yeah.
They call them loveisms or love somethings, whatever, on the side, forays on the side. So that makes him the hero.
Yeah.
And now he gets to be the hero by taking down the comments about a thing that he has exposed her to by releasing all of her traumas and the way that he's dragging her through her traumas again. But he gets to step up and be the hero to protect her from them by taking the comments down.
And that's just
crazy idea. Don't put her in the situation where she's going to need
in the first place.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Okay, number 6, patterns repeating. I said I wasn't going to give my opinion on this.
Yeah, but you can't help yourself.
That was
I
pretty
love that
heated.
about you.
That was pretty heated. I love that about me too, but now I'm going to get the comments about how I'm slamming on them. And that's not my intention, but
no. We're not slamming on them.
No,
we're just...
but when I see a woman exposed like that, and that's what's triggering for you, is you're seeing a woman exposed and the man in his masculine role that he has promised to look after her, and he's not showing up to that commitment.
Yeah.
That's what's pissing you off about this situation.
It's like abuse of power. It's abuse of power. And he's using his position to influence, and he's dragging them along with him. That's it. And because he's powerful, because he's got the social media influence, because the bottom line is her walking away from him, and it may be love, it may be all the personal, it may be the same thing as any other relationship. And there's also the fact that they've got all this influence, they have all this stuff, and walking away from that means you lose it. So when you have a relationship at that level, go talk to any wife who's married to an absentee billionaire, right? Or a guy that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars and he's totally absent. That woman will endure a lot more because she knows what she has.
Even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
The financial slavery from women into being married to in unhappy marriages is the oldest form of slavery that's ever existed.
And so, I just feel like it's an abuse of power of what he's doing. And I mean, maybe that's a little too bold, for this, but that's just how I see it.
I love that you're bold enough to say that. And that's your warrior spirit, that you're standing up for. And that's what you do in the financial space too. So you stand up for the people. Anyway. Thank you. Number 6, patterns repeating, regression in disguise. And you've talked about this when you've mentioned.
Yeah, we've covered this. We're not going to spend too much time on this because we've already talked about it.
It's kind of like the drug addiction thing, though, that he's regressed. Aubrey has walked this road before. Vailana's history of unsafe partners is well documented. And instead of transcending those stories, that's what you would do. You would say, hey, babe, and you are.
And that's the work, y'all.
And that's the work we're in right now, which is
Right
why
now.
we're going to the couples Tantra retreat. We're doing a lot of personal coaching to say, what are our stories? What are our traumas? And how do we transcend them, not escape them? They're going to say that they're not trying to escape them either, that they're transcending them. And I get that from their perspective.
Sure.
And
but that's just a shift in beliefs, right? If they don't believe in a sacred container between the two of them, then
this is how they're trying
the
to
whole conversation here is pointless.
Yeah. But it looks like they're recreating them under new language. Their supposed progressive awakening may actually be a regression dressed up in spiritual branding. I love how you said that. I'm going to read it again just for impact. Ready? This is how I can be a little dramatic.
I love it.
So stay with me. Their supposed progressive awakening may actually be a regression dressed up in spiritual branding. I think that's the summary. Your lens is that true growth means breaking patterns, not rationalizing them with better sounding words. I love that. True growth is breaking patterns, not rationalizing them with better sounding words. Any other thoughts to add on your thoughts?
You hit the nail on the head.
Yes, you did.
Yes, I did. I would say like this is, I don't feel like we need to spend a lot of time here. We've kind of been, this has been at the heart of everything we've been talking about. Growth takes work. And this is just, I feel like he's hiding. I feel like he knows it too, and I could just see it. And maybe he doesn't know it. Maybe he believes all of it. I heard some other people talking about his plant medicine journeys and how God told him to do this. He even talked about it. Like
how Isis
Spirit
told him
Isis told him
he should have a baby with this other woman.
Right, and like, listen, I'm not here ridiculing, criticizing plant medicine. We're going to an ayahuasca retreat tomorrow, right? And so we do it, we get it. It's played a huge role in our life. I would argue we wouldn't be together still if it weren't for that. But if you go into these ceremonies and you're not fully grounded, if you do too many ceremonies without enough integration work, if you don't have the right intentions going in and don't have the right integration coaches who are in alignment with your values, like what I know about plant medicine is most things are not literal. Most things are metaphorical. And so the interpretation of that journey and how did he get that message? And I wasn't there. I can't speak to it, right? So I'm not trying to say he's lying or anything of that nature. But what I do know is that there's more to the story than that. And I just have a hard time believing that this isn't just a misinterpretation of some metaphorical experience. And once again, I wasn't there, but that's just everything in my intuitive cells is telling me that that's the case. And
what happens when you align yourself with people who just play into that? That's the problem.
Ego inflation.
Yeah. And then you surround yourself with yes men. And that's what they've done with this coach. That's like, yes, this is a sacred path. Good for you. And in the same breath, he says, to his own defense, my job here isn't to make this work. My job is to help you all grow and expand through it. This is an experiment. It's a huge and dangerous experiment with people's lives. Thank God they don't have children involved yet. But one thing, we've seen it ourselves in Medicine Journey, is that we had a guy who came out believing that he was told that he is God.
Oh, yeah.
And this was literally in one of our journeys.
Yeah.
And we experienced it. He was like, normal dude, a friend, like cool guy, still a good guy going into the journey. But he came out and with every cell in his being was like, I was told I am God. And by that, he thought like Jesus.
Yeah, like he could take other people's pain and everything. Yeah, it was.
He could transmute other people's pain and send it to the heavens. Like he went out there. And this is the stuff that people are afraid of, quite frankly, with working with medicine. And we and other integrators had to come into his life and speak into him and say, bro, this is metaphor. You are God in the same way that all of us are God. The beautiful part of this is that we're being shown our divinity instead of our brokenness and our imperfections and our own stories. we each are divine. And he's like, no,
Yeah.
no, this isn't what it meant. It meant
That's-
I am a divine being and I'm
Yeah.
meant to like have
I
a
am more
following.
powerful than other people.
And I'm more powerful than other people.
Yeah.
And we were like, no, it's a metaphor. But what would have happened if he came out of that journey and instead of us wrapping him in grounding, we said,
Yeah.
wow, when do you open up your church? When do we start to be able to, worship at your feet? Like, that's how things get out of control. And if you don't have people coming in and correcting that information for you, it can be really scary. Aubrey seems to be pretty unchecked right now with the messages that he's been given. And maybe that's not the case. Maybe other people have said, dude, there's other interpretations. Maybe you're meant to birth a creative project with this person. Maybe you're meant to co-brand something with her. It doesn't mean bring her in as a wife and have a child with her. It's a metaphor for something. So anyway, just wanted to drop that about plant medicine.
100%.
Number 7, false integrity as justification. Justification, huge theme here. You're seeing the bait and switch in their logic, which is that people cheat. So let's be honest and open instead. This has been a theme through her life.
Totally.
And this is a theme, like massive theme.
Yeah.
In doing so, you claim that they excuse dissolving the very sacredness that they're claiming to protect. It's not integrity, it's rebranding the breakdown.
Yeah.
Your value is that integrity isn't just about honesty.
Yeah.
It's about alignment with your highest values, even when it's hard.
Yeah.
So I'll go back to the two key words are justification and integrity.
Yeah.
And excuses.
Yeah,
That just because people do it, is that what justifies? Is that a valid excuse for us to do it
Right.
bigger and bolder
It's-
with honesty?
It's kind of like when our kids come to us and my 10-year-old does something stupid. And I said, why'd you do it? It's because, well, my sister did it. And okay, does that make it right? Did you know it was wrong when you did it? Yeah, I knew it was wrong, but she did it. So I figured I could too. It's like somebody else doing something wrong doesn't make it a justification for you doing something wrong. And I would argue that the more we're circled by this, think about the slippery slope that this is. Like, it could have been 10% of people are cheating. And so 90% go, it's okay. And then all of a sudden it's 15. And then all of a sudden it's 30. And before you know it, everybody cheats. So who gives a shit? Right?
Just do it honestly.
So just do it honestly. And that's where they've become. That's where they've gotten to. So once again, this all comes back to if you believe in the sacredness and keeping a sacred container between you and your loved one, your partner, this is just a dangerous process. And they're using this context of people's imperfection as justification, as an excuse for going out and just trying to do it from a moral, like a more morally high ground and a more spiritually kind of embodied high ground, even though I would argue there's nothing spiritual or sacred about what they're doing. And, I think it's just, they're really good marketers. They're really good. Like Aubrey is talented in a lot of ways, and he's really good at building stories. And he's, like you said in the last one, he's surrounded himself by yes men in a lot of ways. Going back, I wanted to say it when you said it before, is the coach, counselor, doctor, whatever his name is, he stands a lot to gain by agreeing with these guys. Just the fact that he was on this video with them, we always have to be thinking, why are they doing this?
Yeah,
right?
it's going to blow up his career.
Don't get me wrong.
In a good way.
Like if this video were to go viral, we stand a lot to gain by sharing this. Okay, that's fine. Everybody's got something, right? So somebody could watch this video of us and be like, you guys are just making this because you're trying to whatever, blah, 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 make a name for yourself.
They could.
And they could. And that's, we know
They
in our
don't know
heart.
that the air conditioning has
Right.
gone off and
Right.
that I'm literally sitting in a pile of swamp ass. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
this
sitting,
is the Caribbean power issues and all the things that we
and
live
the
in down
AC
here.
is not hitting it right
No.
now, and I am dripping
Yeah.
with sweat, and I got a lot of other things I could
So,
be doing right now.
yeah.
We're doing this as an act of service, and anyone who knows us will know
Right.
that. But anyway, people could look at it
my
and think,
point is
Yeah.
that like everybody has something to gain. We all do things for a reason, and if there's no gain in it, well then you're not going to do it ultimately, even if it's like
not over the long term.
serve it right, not over the long term. And so we always have to question, like, what is the motive behind what's happening? And this guy backing them up and being the guru for them to interview them and coach them and guide them. I wonder if he's just getting false guidance in a lot of ways, right? And he's fallen prey to that. But we'll see how it plays out. And at this point in time, though, it makes it seem like it's just justification. You know, they're using other people's humanness and frailties as an excuse to do the same, but in a more ethical way, so to speak, versus using that as a call to get better. Whereas, which to me is what his role is as the sacred masculine.
So what is your call for people instead?
My
Because
call,
people cheat X, and he said, go out and extend your relationship.
Listen, if you're current, well, first of all, don't cheat. First of all, like if you are in that spot, if you find yourself in a position right now and you did an audit of your life and you said, all right, I'm not living in full integrity, which is what they said, not living in integrity. So if I'm not living in integrity, if I'm watching porn, if I'm talking to women, if I'm flirting with men, if I'm doing anything else like that's out of integrity. And to me, integrity is anything I would be doing that I know she wouldn't be happy about, right? That I know would breach our energetic container, right? Because there are things that she could give consent about that I'm still not going to do because I know it's going to breach what I hold sacred, right? And
regardless of if I would be jealous of it or whatever,
exactly,
or not.
And there are some times that I have to do things or she does things that the other one doesn't necessarily like, but it's actually for the greater good and it is for the sacredness. And so, and especially when you're doing the hard work, that's, you know, in these tough conversations, that kind of stuff comes into play. But yeah, that's what I would say. So
for people who are finding themselves in a breach of their integrity,
yeah.
Do you tell them go out or something different?
No, I tell them double down on what you have and take time and commit. Like, I don't think you should leave your relationship in this way until you've committed and worked and done the work and like can authentically say to yourself, I've done everything I can. We've done all the work. We've tried the things. I've got a partner. The only caveat I'll say there is we met somebody at one of our last retreats and she's like, my husband's out. He won't do anything with me. She came to this thing and she was involved in the retreat and she was all there and her husband's like checked out, not wanting to do it. That makes it tough. It takes two to tango. Like if I was trying to make this marriage work and then Hannah were like, okay, good for you, you know, and was out doing her own thing, well, then it doesn't work. But as long as you have two parties that are wanting the end result, right? It's no different. Principles are principles. You can take business principles, relationship principles, start with the end in mind and reverse the plan to get there, right? It's what it comes down to. And so get clear on what do you want. And then you can look around and figure out, where am I in alignment with being able to create that life? Where am I out of alignment? Where is my wife? Where my husband? Like, where are we as a couple out of alignment? How are we showing up? And ultimately, where do we need to change? You can do this audit pretty easily, but it does take hard conversations. Like, it takes work. It takes openness and vulnerable and looking at your shadow and being allowing your spouse to look at their shadow and communicate to you about their shadow openly without being judgmental and judgmental, threatened, scared, and angry, and not putting it back in their face.
Yeah.
And just being able to hold space for each other.
And is that work worth it?
Fuck yeah.
Don't lose sight of the fact, as people are listening to this, that the work is worth it, because it feels fun and sexy and liberating on the other side to pursue expansiveness. But the other concept of monogamy that really is a beautiful, supportive, loving monogamy that brings you closer to God is a well, right? It's like that was in comparison is the sky is the expansiveness that they're describing as a path to, divinity. And the monogamy is like a well as a path to divinity. And you have to keep drilling, and you're gonna hit some shit in there. You're gonna hit some rocks. It's gonna be jarring, but it's a safe container that's sacred, and you can just go and keep drilling and keep drilling. But it's not gonna get deeper unless we actually do the work to continue drilling the well. Yeah. Okay.
Love it.
All right. Number 8, last one. Sacred masculinity and responsibility. So this is inviting you to put it in a bow here. You are especially disappointed in Aubrey, not because he's exploring a different path. We want to make that clear, But because he knows the trauma history of his wife
Yeah.
and seems to be dragging her through this under the guise of spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So from your lens, you've written it's not about leadership. This isn't leadership. This is selfishness cloaked in transcendence. You had some real drops, which is why I wanted to read this, because the way that you worded it in here was so cool. From your lens, this isn't leadership. It's selfishness cloaked in transcendence. Your value is that the sacred masculine holds space, protects the container, and does the hard work of leading with devotion, not personal gratification. So I think maybe this is your closing insights to offer, why it triggered you, why it matters, and a reminder that you're not being judgmental here.
No.
You're being discerning.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a lot, but in this talk so far, but
Sacred masculine and responsibility.
yeah, that's everything. The sacred masculine, I think our role is responsibility. It's our job to create safety. And since the beginning of time, it's been the man's job to kind of take care of the feminine, right? And I know that's triggery for a lot of people to hear, but it is what it is on a lot of levels. And when I look at what he's doing right now and how he's kind of positioning, it goes back to what I was saying about him using his power and influence, and it's an abuse of power. And rather than taking the responsibility that a man would have to protect something he's built, to protect something that he's co-created, and take 100% ownership of that, he's basically kind of, in my opinion, reacting in a way of like a trust fund kid who didn't work for anything. And he's like, whatever. I'm just this is the new direction I want to go. And it's just very, once again, very reactive. It doesn't feel very well thought through. It doesn't, because I believe that he loves her. I do. I believe he loves her. I believe he wants the best for her. But when you look at how he's acting and what he's dragging her through and how he's being so reactive, as we've talked about in so many ways, it's impossible for me to think that he's thought all this through to the level that I would expect a leader for him to responsibly handle before doing anything of this nature.
Yeah.
It's almost like, all right, my name's Aubrey and I'm a public figure, and wow, we just started this relationship, and because I'm a public figure and because we go all these places, I have to just get this out in the public now because people are going to find out. And so we got to make this video. And so let's just figure it out, right? And so then they went down this path, and I'm not saying this is the way it happened, but this is the way my brain is processing this. And so he's so deep in the spiritual world, and he does so much plant medicine, and he's done a lot of work. So I'm not meaning to take anything away from him on that, but I do believe his ego is misconstruing a lot of the points and a lot of the perspectives. And I think that because that's the case, and because he's surrounded himself probably not with some of the best people, giving the most pure guidance in a way, I think he's gone down this path of reactiveness to put out a situation that he had to stay ahead of, because he wanted to be. It's like he wanted to put it out there before somebody came to him, and this is their way of doing it. And now he's on his heels a little bit right now, and I don't know, but that's just how I see it. And so the one thing he's done really well, and I'm not saying this is good, but he's doing it really well to a lot of people, is he's really good at that spiritual transcendence, that talk about evolution, coming from a higher transcended level of seeing the world and expansiveness and all these things. And
it comes from voices from God.
Oh my gosh. And so how could I ignore them? It's like, I don't know. It's tough. I would say this is that, and this is to everybody, because listen, I've had voices from God when I was on. I've had conversations with Jesus. I've had my own voices that told me to get these tattoos, and that told me to so I'm not saying I don't listen to voices too, but I think we have a responsibility. This is where the integration work comes in. we have a responsibility after those voices to break them down and to try to figure out and to not be selfish and to realize, like, if those voices harm another person,
others.
well, then I don't believe that's divine.
Yes.
I don't believe that there's a chance that there's a voice out there that would ask him to breach his sacred container with his spouse.
There are voices. They're not the voice of God.
Right, exactly. And so I think you have a responsibility, especially as a leader, to I don't know, to be more diligent. Discerning. That's the word I was looking for.
And if you can't find that discernment yourself, surround yourself with people who will challenge you, as opposed to people who will say, yes, what an amazing job you're doing. What a great idea this is. This is a fantastic idea.
Yeah. So I think that's it. Like, that's the big thing.
I think in conclusion, I mean, obviously you're on a path of integrated masculinity and soul-aligned love. And let this disappointment, and if you're feeling disappointment too, as a viewer, let it reinforce your truth.
Yeah.
Let it deepen your devotion to the path that you're walking. And that's something that we're going to be able to do.
I would just say that do the things that kind of we talked about is use the fact that take the stats that they give about 6 minutes a day, about 60% of people not being in integrity in their marriage, and do an audit on yourself and ask yourself, where do you fall on that spectrum? And don't use that as an excuse to reduce your standards and to go that route. Use that as a reason to elevate.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're claiming your erotic truth without compromising the container. And you wrote that. That's why I'm reading it. This is your words in here.
Yeah.
That you are doing the work to reclaim, or for others, and to share with them, reclaiming masculine devotion.
Yeah.
Claiming your erotic truth without compromising the container. Yes, it might be rare, but that's also what makes it powerful. And I love that's...
And to that point, doing that, like, I feel like, and this isn't the point of the video, but I feel like you just sparked this in me when you said that. Men, I feel like, have this position where it's gimme, gimme, gimme. It's the woman's job to have sex with me and to pleasure me and to provide for me that way because I provide for her in all these other ways. When the reality is, as a man, your only job is to create safety and be responsible and protect what's sacred to you and your spouse. And she is the most sacred thing on this earth walking to me, more than my kids, more than anything. And so it's my job to protect her and to protect us. Sometimes I have to protect her from outside things. Sometimes I have to just protect the family. And sometimes I got to protect her from herself. And that's okay, right? But here's the deal. In that, once again, nobody's perfect. But as a man, if you want all those things, become the guy that does that. Become the masculine that provides that safety, that provides that protection, and they know they can trust with their lives, right? Like, and when you get there, I feel like the rest of it is way easier to figure out. And instead of going that direction and having that perspective and getting that polarity back, because that's my guess, is like some of it kind of vanished a little bit because he's so used to partner, and then all of a sudden maybe a couple years with one woman and it's like, it just goes stale. And then it's easy to just want to open it up. In those moments, because it happens to everybody, we've gone through that. Hell, we're going through it to an extent right now. And so now is when we're doubling down. I'll make it personal. This is when we're doubling down and doing the work and doing it for us rather than going outside. Because it would be, it's not easier or harder. It's just different. And it would be a violation of my beliefs to do it, you know? And I'm not going to do anything to risk the thing that I hold most dear in this world, which is our container. So
thank you. And the more that you advocate for that container and you fight for us, the more attracted to you I am. Yeah. Not because it's a transaction, not because you provide for me and so I put out for you. Right. That's an old model and it's an ugly model and it feels like shit for both of us. Yeah. It's as you create and honor this amazing container to allow me to just be then the outpouring of my love can show up as it feels like it, when it feels like it, not on a Friday night, date night, fucking calendar regimen. That doesn't work for me. Some people it does. They schedule it. Some people it doesn't. But for most of us women, we're on a cycle. We're on a flow. We have ebb and flow. And you want it to come to you on surprise when like least expected, you know? And in a way that is an overflow from my own self-awareness and love and feeling safe and protected. And that's the real, raw, beautiful, powerful feminine, is an opening as opposed to a giving when we don't necessarily want to.
100%.
So I think let's close with these last couple of quotes from you.
Okay,
I will read from you. Read to you, both of you. Eros isn't something to chase outside of the container. It's something to awaken through depth, safety, polarity, and sacred tension within it. Sacred masculinity is not about holding the fire, not feeding it elsewhere. Or, excuse me, I did that wrong.
I was going to say,
sacred masculinity, just making sure that y'all paying attention.
Yeah.
Sacred masculinity is about holding the fire, not feeding it elsewhere when it gets too hot. Actually, I would say not feeding it elsewhere when it loses its heat.
Yeah. But when it gets too hot, like when it becomes too hard for him to handle and just sit in it.
Yes,
right?
when it's hard to sit in the quiet, when it's hard to sit in it.
Yeah.
Like in recovery, we say get comfortable in the uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Get comfortable with the discomfort.
Yeah.
Sacred masculinity is about holding that fire, even and whatever. I'm screwing up the quote, but you guys get what I mean.
So
you get the concept.
So hopefully you guys, I don't know if this is valuable, if it gives any insight, if you've been following this saga. I just thought, well, first of all, these are just things I've been doing, obviously a lot of my own work. And this isn't something I've been naturally gifted with in my life. This whole creating polarity and doing all these different things. It takes work for me. And it's something that I've committed to because it's worth doing. And in this work, it's what's led to a lot of these reflections. It's what's in seeing, and I guess it's one of the reasons that it affects me so much when I was seeing him go through it. And so I would just encourage, if you resonated with any of it, leave a comment and let us know like what you resonated the most with. And if you disagreed with something, like I'm curious about that too. Hannah hates the nasty comments, but like I don't care.
I believe in disagreeing with respect.
Yeah, disagree with respect.
And I'll have a debate with anyone about anything at any time, and I will respectfully disagree with someone's opinion. I will respectfully disagree with the way that things are being handled here and still love the person.
Yeah.
I love the person. I just want to make sure that others aren't, in this case, make sure others aren't getting harmed.
Yeah.
If you guys like the vibe of what we are putting out, we would love to have you join the Hive, where we just have these raw, real, obviously unscripted conversations, sometimes with me sweating my ass onto the couch in the middle of it. But we would love to just have these engaging conversations as we're all on the path of trying to figure it out. How do we heal? How do we grow? And how do we thrive together? And this just happens to be the relationship and sexual, sensual arena. But on our channel, we love talking about lots of other ways. Holistic health. We talk about obviously wealth and freedom and finance, like all the different topics of ways to heal, grow, and thrive. So if this touched a chord in you, cool. Have a great conversation with your spouse about it in the same way that Chris and I are. And we'd love to hear how that's going. And any other, like you said, any other comments?
Yeah, I would just say hopefully something that we said today, if you are in a monogamous relationship and you're looking to make it work and you're just having a hard time finding the words and breaking it down, if you're worried that your partner isn't there, hopefully this can give you some words and empowerment that you can stand in your truth.
Yeah. Oh, and we are attending. We've dropped a couple times that we're attending this couples retreat.
Oh yeah.
It's actually coming out the end of June. It's coming out in like,
Austin.
3 weeks?
Just outside of Austin.
If we can get this video out in time, we will drop the link to it so that you can potentially apply. Come and check it out. It's not for couples on the brink. It is for couples who are in what I'm calling the sex swamp, that are like devoted and the container is there and they want to enhance and improve without going outside of the container. So that's what it's all about.
In full integrity.
Right? We're going to
Yeah.
learn some cool new skills and techniques, and we are going to be pushing our edges. And we have some other couples that are friends. We have hopefully some new couple friends that are coming. And we're all here to heal, to grow, and to thrive together in this way. So that's going to be a little stretchy. It's definitely going to be a lot of fun.
Yep.
It's going to be some good, some bad, some crazy. It's going to make some great ass stories. And either way, we'll drop the info for you if you'd like to come and join us.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right, guys.
Cool.
We'll see you next time.
Mwah.